This week's tip, we go back to finishing, and this is a 1-row horizontal buttonhole. And this is your basic standard 1-row horizontal buttonhole. If you look at different reference sources, you'll see different techniques, but this is the basic one. I'm going to do it in stockinette just so that it'll be easier to see. And I have 9 stitches, 3, 3, 3. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have 3 stitches on either side of the buttonhole. Okay? Now to work this buttonhole, and I'll have the steps, whoops, sorry about that, the steps written out in the blog, is you work up to where the buttonhole is. And I'm going to have 3 stitches in front of the buttonhole, 3 stitches on the other side, and a 3-stitch buttonhole. You bring the yarn forward, and you slip the first stitch of the buttonhole onto your right needle, and you bring the yarn to the back. And this is kind of like anchoring it. It's giving a little bit of additional strength. And then I slip the next stitch to my right needle, and I pull this stitch over, and I'm binding off without working into the stitch, and this gives you a very, very, very tight bind off. Slip, bind off. So I've got, whoops, that's 2, and I'm going to do 1 more, 3. Now when you make this use this buttonhole, be very careful that you know exactly how many stitches you've bound off. If you don't know how to count your bound off stitches, I have a blog entry on that as well, so check it out. So I've got my bind off there, and notice that that is not going anywhere. It's very firm. I've got 3 stitches here, 3 stitches here. Now I need to work the rest of the buttonhole, and I turn my work and I use the cable cast on. And if you've never used the cable cast on before, how it's worked is you insert your needle in between the first and second stitch on your left needle, and you wrap your yarn around now and pull it over. I do it a slightly different way when I'm making this buttonhole, because if you notice on this side it's smooth, looks kind of like a regular cast on edge. If I were to work a regular cable cast on, because I'm on the wrong side of my work, I would have a bumpy edge on the other side, and that just bothers me. So I'm going to work a cable cast on purlwise, and that just means that it's going to give me a smooth edge on the other side. So I insert it between those needles, and I slide that stitch up onto the needles. Now the cable cast on is a very inelastic cast on, so that's one reason why we're using it. I've seen some references where you use E-cast-ons, and that's just way too loose. Pull it up. 1, 2, 3. Now, one of the things that's kind of hard to do is to kind of count. It may look like I have 4 stitches that I've cast on, but remember, that's a stitch that was still there. And when you cast on for this 1-row buttonhole, you cast on the number of stitches you've bound off plus 1, because that's going to provide an anchor to the last stitch of the buttonhole. And I'm going to go put that on. So I have 3 plus 1, and now I'm ready to turn. Now I'm going to anchor that last stitch of my buttonhole, and notice how I've got a nice smooth cast on edge there. That's what it would look like if I did it knitwise. It just bothers me. So I'm going to slip this stitch, and in much the same way I passed the stitch over my first buttonhole stitch, I'm going to pass that extra stitch I cast on over that stitch. And this yarn is fuzzy. Okay, and I'm going to cinch it up, and I'm going to work to the end of the row. Now, I love this buttonhole because it is very, very strong. It does not stretch out. So if I have a garment where I don't want the buttonholes to stretch out, this is the one I'd use. I'd also practice this a few times and really plan out how I plan to use it in my garment. I wouldn't just merely cast on the button band and start planning, because you really need to think about how many stitches are in that button band, how often you're going to work these, how many stitches it takes to make the buttonhole, etc. So it does require some planning. Plus, you should just practice it so that you know how to make it the best way possible. All right, there's the buttonhole. And